Hi, good morning, and welcome back to this class of study on religion. And the class title again is a survey on global religion, the world religion. And the first part again is about what is a religion and why. Why do people have religion? Yeah, you may say I'm an atheist and I don't have any religion, but at least you would have a certain belief system that would be almost like religion. You may not come to a church or a sanctuary or a temple to worship, but you have your own way of worship, and you should have something that you are believing in and worshiping. So in that manner, with the very wide definition of religion, that is having something to worship or something to believe in. If that is a definition of a religion, then everyone uh, do uh, does have a certain religion one way or another. So religion has to do with the human being. It is with the humanity. Humanity meaning something that is of a human being. So with the religion and humanity is very close. And the clues and keys of understanding a religion, you have to find it in a person, a humanity. So it is important to try to relate the religion and humanity and find the natures of human being. Thus, we should be able to understand what is a religion and what does it do. So last class, previous classes, we have dealt with the very definition of religion, and that's an academic religion, and then concepts, more elaborated concept of religion. Then we also looked into some functions of a religion or any religion for the matter of facts. And today we are going to review a little of something that we have done last week. Just we did some introduction to this religion and humanity, but we are not able to go further. So we'll cover that a little bit and then continue with this topic of how the religion and humanity, or how the humanity caused us to have a certain religion. So we'll begin. So in last week, previous class, we did cover this topic, religion and human context. Context meaning the surroundings, the conditions, the situations, the environment. And in our case, it is human reality. So it is real for us. I mean, the life is dealing with the reality that is given to us human beings. So as you look into someone's life, and just your life, look at your life. You have all these surroundings, the people, the certain political situation. There's a culture. Then you have a society, and then you have this environment, and then there's an invisible reality called the history, which which is a narrative, long, very long narrative going back probably thousand years ago, and then started there. Then in that narrative, whether it's ethnic narrative or whether it's a national narrative or whether it's a family narrative, there is a narrative, and in within that narrative, that history, you are coming into this world, the life. So, including that history, the reality is a vast uh, surroundings that you face every day. And this reality is not perfect. Not perfect. Because of that imperfection, having some issues and problems, then you have issues and you have questions and you have agendas that you need to deal with and try to resolve. And the way a human being interacts, whether you or someone else, if you are interacting with this reality that is given, that is called existence. Another word, I mean, easy vocabulary will be life. So your life is about how you deal with all the surroundings, all this, the context, the reality that is given. So this is very simple, but these are the very important key to understanding humanity or human life, or the context and text. And then there's something called human culture. Culture is a part of existence. Culture is a part of reality. So the culture covers both the reality and existence. And culture is given. You did not created the culture that you are in. And you're born into it. As you're born into it, then the culture is given. But any and every human being that is living on earth with the right mind, we will just exclude those who are not normal or insane, because we cannot talk about those people. They are unique. But normal, most people do react to the reality, which includes the culture, and by reacting to the culture, we create our own culture. So culture is never the same, and it's never inclusive or exclusive. It is always changing, and it's very like a fluid, and it's never stable. It's like a water, and water flows from A to B, high to low, and in that process, it may evaporate and become rain, and it comes back again. Culture has that kind of very similar function. Thus, culture is more organic than just the material. Culture is very fluid, and it's organic. And yet, in that culture, within that culture, there's something called religion. So this is a big picture. So you react with the reality, and that's called existence. This whole process of reacting. and as time and the space. Then you react to the time, to the space, the reality within the time frame. And then that becomes your existence. It kind of begins and goes toward the end. And then within that reality, there's something called culture. And within that culture, there's something called religion. That's what we are dealing with. So we just have reviewed the whole big picture. And let's go to the next one. So human as a spiritual being. At least we can talk about these four elements that constitute or construct or compose a human being as a spiritual being. Maybe the animals, let's compare with the animals. Animals may, some people say they do have soul. But I kind of doubt it. I'm sure that the animals, dogs and birds, they do have their own mind, and the thinking, and then feeling, and reacting to the given reality. So that's work of mind. The soul is basically it's about having the ability to have intellect and the emotion and then make a decision. So mind and soul kind of it goes together. And then you have the spirit, which the animals do not have. The spirit is something that is unique to a human being. So us as a human being, every human being does have spirit. And we have a soul, we have mind, the thinking process, and then we have something called senses. We do smell, we do taste, we do hear, we do see. And these senses, animals do have these senses too. And there's something called sixth sense. There, other than those five senses, that physical sense, there's something called sixth sense, which is probably unique to the human being. But some scientists who study the animals, they believe some animals has acute sixth sense, and there are some evidences like rats knowing the earthquake beforehand, before even it happens. But some scientists are trying to explain it with physiological elements. But some scientists says that they have acute sixth sense. So it depends on which side you are. But anyway, human as a spiritual being, we are unique in the fact that we do have something called a spirit, which is invisible, because it's invisible, you cannot scientifically prove or disprove, because the spirit would be something beyond our normal understanding. So, but dealing with a religion, it is probably important for us to understand what the spirit is. Because very core of religion, in religion there's something called a spiritual or spirituality, because spirituality, let's write that down. spirituality, actually. Spirituality. This ought to be the key to understanding religion. So, first thing, trying to understand human being in relation to the religion, trying to understand the humanity, because we want to understand the religion, wider religion, right? And next, human as a spiritual being, we have heart, thought, dream, and déjà vu. These things, heart is the utmost motive of a person. It's genuine, and it's related to something called conscience. So your heart and conscience. Heart is something that moves every action of you, other than instinct. There's even human beings have certain instinct to survive. Those things are very automatic. It's embedded. It doesn't need the heart to function to avoid or run away from fire. See, that's kind of instinct. You don't think. Your body and your mind acts immediately when you face a danger. But otherwise, this heart is very key to the understanding of human being. And in the Bible says God does not care much about how your action is, but He is more focused on your heart, the utmost motive. So some people sit in the church or temple, and then their heart is not there. But on the other hand, they may not come to the church, the place of worship, but their heart is always toward that God or the object of worship. It could be Allah, it could be Yahweh, it could be God the Father, or Jesus Christ, or Buddha. Whoever that is, the question is your heart there with someone that you are worshiping? And if your heart is not there, and you're just trying to show that you are religious, so-called religious, then your heart is not there. So the spiritual spirit and heart is very close. And Jesus said, where your heart is, that's the real you. So it's so true. So uttermost motive. What's inside you? What is really true? So heart has to do with being true or in religion, in any religion, this is very key concept. Not only is a concept, it's a core belief. So a religion being a belief system, the core is about truth, and that truth and true is has to do with your heart. So question is, what is your heart believing? Very inside, very utmost, very true. And your heart cannot lie. Your lips, your tongue, your words, even your expressions may lie. but your heart cannot. So it is always important to know someone else's heart if you're trying to have a true and the genuine relationship. So that's where heart is. We'll go back to that sometime in the process of this discussion that we are having for several classes. Okay, and then thoughts. That's the thinking. Thinking, you know, I don't need probably explain too much because everyone has their own thoughts, and you are at this moment, even this very moment, you are thinking. You're hearing, listening to my lecture, but there are thoughts that are related or not related to the lecture. So your thought may be somewhere traveling while you're listening to this lecture. So that's thoughts. And then dream is a very spiritual element. Yeah, we know that dogs and the cats, they do dream. And it's not very exclusive to the human being. But the dream, you may dream that is very spiritual, very strange, very mysterious. When that happens, we know that we are a spiritual being. Deja vu, seeing something that is future, and you suddenly remember, I saw this before, and it is happening now. So people have certain ability to see the future. Everyone has a different ability, but every person have a little bit of ability to see to the future. So these things tell us that men are not just the animals. We do have a certain spiritual aspects. Not only we are spiritual being, we are interpersonal being. Again, going back to the discussion comparing human being to the animal. Animals does have certain interpersonal aspects. They can relate to one another, or they can relate to the human beings. But that relation is not so much interpersonal as we define here. Because this interpersonal, as we define it, it does include the spiritual dimension. And it does include a very effective and intense communication. So, by that definition of an interpersonal relationship, animals are not capable of having that kind of intense communication. Even among themselves, their communication is limited to certain, aspects. They are not able to communicate like a human beings are. They cannot text one another. They cannot write to one another, or do the thing. I mean, human beings, they have very vast way of having the relationship, and which is sometimes not so interpersonal, but most of the time it is interpersonal. And these interpersonal relationship, it does have that person that you are to relate to. So thus it has someone on the other side. And first, in a religion, human being does have relationship or interpersonal relationship with the deity. Deity meaning, and the status of God. Okay, I'll use that word very often because I'm trying to avoid the word God, because in some other religions, it may not be God as we understand. But Islam, Judaism, and Catholics and Protestant Christians, they use the word God. And in most of the cultures that use the English as their primary language, for example, England, the USA, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, they use these differentiate God with a large G, capital G. It means God of Bible, Yahweh God. So that's a biblical God, one God, and Unitarian God. And when we say gods, that's other kind of God. That's lower than the God, the mighty one, the biblical one. Of course, there are gods according to the Bible. There is God, and then there are gods, which is equal to the other spirits or evil spirits. So God did not allow other gods, but he did create angels, and some of the angels, according to the Bible, they disobeyed God and left God and went against God. So these angels and the God and God's angels, they do fight. So that's one of the biblical worldview. Okay. Anyway, so deity, there's God, and then there are angels. See, even in other religions other than Christianity or Islam or the Judaism, they believe in angels because they believe in the same Old Testament. Not exactly the same, but pretty much the same. And in the Bible, Old Testament, there are mentions of angels many times. And but even in other religions, there are something that is close to angels. Angels are the beings between God and human being, somewhere in between. They're not God, but they are not human being either. So these are the angels. And sometimes in some religion they call that spirits. Spirits. So spirits and angels is pretty much the same in some religion, but in some religion they are different. In the Bible, angels and the spirits are two different things. But some of the spirits are angels according to the Bible. Okay, I wouldn't go any further because I don't want to confuse you. Anyway, there are spirits and there are people, we people, and there are other people. And human beings, us, we are very, very numb. And we are very concerned about knowing who are we people and who are other people. And they use many different measurements or categories or barometers to distinguish we people and other people. For example, there are national we people kind of thinking. Korean, South Korean, North Korean. So North Korean and South Korean, actually, they were the same we people for 5,000 years. But these days there are two different people. We South Korean and they, the other people, the North Korean. Or we Korean people to Japanese people. We have very, I mean, there are some unfortunate history, even though we are neighbors. Same thing with the China. So China, Japan, and Korea, we have conflicts, and then helping each other. Then again, the conflicts and so on. So there are like national barriers of dividing we people and other people. As we know, today in America, there are so-called race, black, white, and yellow, brown, red, whatever the color is. So the skin color also divides we people and other people. So that's kind of the picture of human relationship. We are very interpersonal being with creating or discreating the relationship. And the religion, as we discussed, it deeply it involves all these aspects of interpersonal dimension of human being. Then religion, it exists within a context, the reality. So also human context, it involves people, it involves culture, it involves history, it involves society, and it involves the ecology, the environment. So these are the things that create your context. And it depends on, the religion largely and heavily has to do with the given context. And you cannot separate your religion with these elements that we are seeing here. So any religion and every religion is closely, it deals with the people, the culture, and it does try to explain your history, and it does formulate your society. Religion and society is very close, and then the religion is born out of your environment, and so the religion and context is very closely related. So there's people factor, and the culture is as you see, culture does include religion. So religion is a very important and fundamental part of any given culture, whether it's Asian, whether it's African, whether it's American. The religion is very, very basic of any culture. And in this particular picture, they do not include religion, because this is given by a very atheistic perspective. See, in modern times, so-called science, and the science, most science, it presumes no God, no supernatural, no religion. So science and religion, many years in history, they went against one another. And it's still, so atheists, if you're a scientist or sociologist, whatever the dimension you are in, there are many atheists who try to exclude religion intentionally. And even though they may exclude organized, institutionalized religion like Catholics, Buddhism, or Islam, they still have their own religion called atheism or science. Science becomes someone's religion. And so, even though they do not have the religion in here, the culture here should include religion. Society, very, very complex elements that creates a society, and the religion takes a very important part. And the history, you cannot separate your history, your narrative from the religion. Even the atheist, for example, in Korea, let's say, you don't go to temple, you don't the Buddhist temple, you don't go to church, and say you don't have any religion, but many still, probably those who are without religion, they do something called ancestor worship, in like a New Year day, and then the lunar moon festival. In Korea, they do have this ceremony, making the feast for the ancestors and bow down, and then even some like pray in a very different form from us Christians, but they do have. I mean, they say their wishes. That's a prayer. That's formal prayer, and there are certain rituals that they do. Certain food has to go to the west, and certain food has to be sitting on the east side of the table. So that's kind of ritual, and it's very formal religion. So even the atheists, they do have certain formal worship. So these things, and even the shamanism within the history. So anyone who are living on earth today, they cannot escape from the umbrella of a religion, because the context does include that religious elements. And religion and human existence. This is something called the culture. Culture is it's kind of group thing. It's a community thing. How a community reacts or responds to the reality. Instead of you, there are many of you and others, people together as a society, as a community. How a society responds to a reality, that is called culture. And in a culture, these things, politics, economy, and the education, health, media, sports, arts, and so on. And very important part of the human existence is religion. Actually, religion goes up there, above the politics. Used to be, but these days, politics is above religion in many cultures. That's kind of modern thing. But you know what? When the politics becomes on the top of the list of the your cultural agenda, then the politics, so-called ideology, becomes your religion. So ideology as a pseudo religion, it takes the place of religion. And I mean, there are all the things, rituals there are meetings, and there are certain doctrines that you believe in within the political agenda. If you're democratic, then you have to believe in certain things. If you're a Republican, you don't believe in the pro-choice So these things, the belief, these are the doctrine system. And you may worship Donald Trump in place of God. So, see, these things, I mean, people can be, I mean, a live person can be the object of worship, just like a God is. You can worship unseen, but you can say at the same time can worship something that's visible and tangible. So the politic may become your religion. So the definition of religion is very broad in our discussion here in this classroom. So the human existence, it does require certain religious aspect, certain religious behavior, and certain religious belief, even though it may not be a existing institutionalized or organized religion. Still, you will have a certain religion. I introduced this Maslow theory or Maslow's pyramid. See, this talks about the human needs. The reason I go into the discussion of human needs because many of the religions, not all of them though, most of religion are the product of trying to trying to meet the human needs. See, there's something called a very basic need. Need to eat, need to sleep, need to house, and need to wear the clothes. And these are very basic needs for a human being. And the next level is called love, safety. People need to be safe. It's the security and the survival. So the survival and security kind of goes together, but Maslow kind of differentiated the need for safety to the need to eat and survive. So you need to be protected. You want to feel safe at your home. And if that does not happen, then you are going to be agitated. You are going to be angry. You're going to be fearful on the other hand. So when the fear is there, or anger is there, or anxiety is there, we need to resolve that. And that's a basic human nature. I mean, also the animals has the same need. They need to eat and shelter, and then they also need to have that sense of security, the safety. Same thing for the animals. But animals do not have this mechanism of responding with the soul and the spirit. But human beings, they do have something called that spirit. So when they face fear against their own safety, then humans are developing, because we are built, created as a spiritual being. There's always that spiritual dimension, spiritual reaction to the issues that you face. And then love and belonging, that's more higher needs. And when you are not loved by your fellow human being, when you don't feel that you belong with your fellow human being, even with your family, and even with your mother and father, then there is a very disturbing situation that is created. And when that happens, then you have to resolve that problem, that issue. And there comes the religion. So religion is trying to answer these questions, these needs that are within us. It is built in. You don't have choice. I mean, you cannot avoid having these needs. Then there is something called self-esteem, and then there's self-actualization. Self-actualization, the question is, who am I? Why am I here on earth? What is my life is about? What is it about? What's the meaning of life? These are the so-called ultimate questions. I'm gonna deal with this further, but so because that need for self-actualization and self-esteem, which the animals may not have. Certainly, the animals do not have that need for self-actualization. They eat and sleep and then propagate actually reproduce, and then the basic needs for animals are met. Even the social animals like cats and the dog who are relating to human beings, they do not have these needs. No, that's very exclusive and to the privilege of human being. And see, when that self-actualization it becomes your problem, your needs. I mean, it is always there and does not come up when you're hungry, when you're threatened, your safety is threatened, then that need kind of goes underwater. But when all these things are met, then self-esteem and self-actualization becomes very issue of your survival. Many who are committing suicide, they do not do so because they are hungry. I mean, when you're hungry, you have that need for survival, and you don't kill yourself usually when you're not fed, when you're not sheltered. But when these things are met, even the when you feel that you're unloved, when you don't have an answer to that very ultimate question, because there are some people who are being loved, but they do not appreciate that love. Then that question of who am I, why am I here, becomes very serious question. And when you don't find the answer, then you try to terminate your life. And then this is where the religion comes in to play a very key and important part. So again, there are basic human needs. There are physical, mental, and spiritual needs. This is a little different from the perspective of Maslow, but it's not so much different because that self-actualization and self-esteem, that is also, you can say, mental and spiritual needs. So these needs are to be met. That's the human nature. The reason for the existence is to feel these needs. And the reason that you're working so hard, the reason that you're coming to the class and listening to the lecture, even through this the video, the virtual class, all these things has to do with trying to feel that need, whether it's physical, mental, and the spiritual. Usually spiritual is not so visible, but there it is, always underlying spiritual needs. And you may not recognize it, but when you face a crisis, and or again, when your all other needs are met, then there's this issue of spiritual needs. Again, the physical needs. It's about food, having water, air, and shelter, and clothing, and these things. So this is called something called a basic need, and it's the same as animals. Animals have these needs as well. And then there is something called psychological needs. Psychological. Inherent desire to interact with the environment or reality, in our case, with the reality, so as to advance personal growth, social development, and psychological well-being. And the reason we engage in our environment is to involve and to satisfy our psychological needs. So this is what we call psychological needs. And this is one of the example of how people see these psychological needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. That kind of feeds to your self-determination. So that's need for survival, need for power, and the need for law, need for fun, and these need for freedom. These are called psychological needs. And there's something called spiritual needs. Spiritual needs, this is needs and expectation which humans have to find meaning, purpose, and value in their life. Again, meaning, purpose, and value in their life. Such needs can be specifically religious, but even people who have no religious faith, even no religious faith, or are not the member of an organized religion, have belief systems that give their lives meaning and purpose. See, this is a very academic definition of spiritual needs. Whether you're a believer or atheist, you do have spiritual needs, because every human being are a spiritual being, and you cannot avoid this spiritual needs. So here are some examples. Need to be respected and valued. That's a kind of spiritual needs. Some psychologists, modern psychologists, will say that's a psychological need or mental need. No, that's a spiritual need, to be respected, to be valued, and then need for dignity. Need for dignity is also a key. You need to want to be a person. And in a civilized world, every person is respected of their dignity. as a human being. That's why the Black Lives Matter movement is there. I mean, you're not a self-human being because you're black or Asian. It's totally against our value. And most religions despise. I mean, they go against racial discrimination because any good religion believes every human being are created equal. There's no difference between black and white or white and Asians. So that's civilized world or civilized religion respects all the human being, no matter what their skin or color or what their level of wealth or education is. So that's not the measurement. Every human being as a person has certain dignity, God given. And need for meaning to the fullness of life. And that having to have the fullness of life in the Bible is called the God is given the blessing to the human being, any and every human being. They may have fullness of their life. Each one has different aspects or different kinds of life, but that doesn't mean that they should have less of life. Everyone should enjoy the fullness of their life that is given or designated. And that is called blessing in the Bible. I'll go further when we discuss this term blessing, because blessing is the major element in any religion. Then need for values. Again, these are some of the spiritual example of spiritual needs. Connection, peace, meaning and purpose, and transcendence. That transcendence is a concept that we need to elaborate further later on. That's beyond our visible physical world. That means transcendent. So man has two great spiritual needs. One is for forgiveness, the other is for goodness. This is that famous Billy Graham, and he did see these spiritual needs in any human being, every human being. There's a need for forgiveness. See, we say people are not perfect, which means you make a mistake, you sin, you do harm others, may even harm yourself, because there's always that two different self conflicting within yourself, because you're a human being, you're a spiritual being. And when you done something wrong, or even say mistakes, do you do this once? You do lie. And according to some study, a human being, normal human being, living daily life, busy life, they do lie 200 times a day, per day. So that's average. You may do less or more. But see, at least, let's say you lie once a day. That's 365 lies per year. And all through, that's 3,600 plus lives per 10 years. And throughout your life, you're going to be a lot more than that. So, when you lie, your conscience tells you that you're lying. And some people just try to ignore it, but it is there, that guilt is there. So that's that need for forgiveness. If you feel that you have some certain guilt, because your conscience tells, conscience is not part of your psychological process, it's not your mental process. Conscience is your spiritual self telling your physical self, your mental self, that you are not doing it right. And the conscience is a very key part of your spiritual being. And the other is for the goodness. People want to do good for themselves and especially for others. There is the nature of trying to be good to others. And you may exercise it, you may not do it as your conscience tells you to. But there's always that goodness in a human being. So these two, the evil and good, are within yourself, and that creates your spiritual needs. And if you cannot, if you can say boldly against what I have just said, then you are not spiritual being. And then you may not need any religion at all. And you can say, I'm not religious. But the matter of truth is, any human being who is normal and sane, not insane, but sane, a normal person, would have these needs. So human as a personal being, again, this is part of soul. So human has a spirit, and then we have something called soul, which is also not visible. You cannot test a soul. You cannot picture a soul as much as you cannot take a picture of a spirit. So this is not something that you cannot say tangible or touchable or visible, but it is there, and it's called soul or mind. So how human mind is constructed, these three elements, and it has to do with the religion. It greatly has to do with religion. So affirmative, another word, willing. You have desire, you have will to decide, you have will to do certain things. So that's called affirmative dimension of your soul. And then affective, meaning that you have feelings. You can be sad, you can be joyful, you can feel despair. These things called feelings. And person is a feeling being. They feel. It's an affective dimension. And then cognitive. Cognitive meaning knowing, knowledge. You get the knowledge and you respond. Some people respond to the knowledge in their head level. Some people respond to the knowledge with their hearts. So there is a difference, very key difference between a person who is responding with the head only and with the mind and heart. And so this is a human soul, and because we have a soul, a religion is taking. I mean, that religion is something that trying to feel and even heal this human need, spirit and soul. So this is what is pure love and thinking. Affirmative, agreeing with or consenting to a statement or request, or supportive, hopeful, or encouraging. So that's affirmative human spirituality. Okay. See, this, when we say spiritual, it's a very vague word. It's very undefined. And it's very confusing. But being spiritual, it deals with these topics. Because you are spiritual, you are able to discern discern means you evaluate certain things, or even the person with the values, good or bad. So, good and evil, good or bad, that requires a discerning. First to yourself and then to others. So human beings are equipped with this ability to discern the good and evil, which none of the animals has. They don't have this value of good and evil. They may do the right thing and wrong thing. That doesn't mean that there's good and evil. Good and evil is a much higher value than right and wrong. See? Right and wrong. This is called ethical values. Ethical values. This is not a spiritual value. So these ethical values may vary from one culture to the other culture. What is right in America may not be right in China, or the other way around. But good and evil, it is universal. It is common in every culture and every nation. Whether you live in America, China, or Korea, Japan, or elsewhere, whether you're Islam, whether you're Christian, whether you're Buddhist, the good and evil has to be the same. I mean, it's universal. And we call this value of good and evil to be truth. Very good. The truth. So truth matters. That means good and evil. So good and evil and truth goes kind of together at the same level. And how do you determine this? Basically, the conscience. That's the embedded tool, the God-given tool inside us that is able to, activate when you are doing something that is evil, when you are doing something that is good. Your conscience tells you are being evil. Not only you are being wrong or bad, you are being evil. So, good and evil can be determined. No one has to to tell you, but you know automatically by instinct, because of built-in conscience, you know this is good, this is evil. And religion, any good religion always deals with this topic of good and evil. So thus we can say that is very key and center of the spirituality. Okay, this is a difficult English to pronounce. Spirituality. Okay, so that's human spirituality, and that is the key and the core of any good religion. Okay, thank you for listening, and we'll try to stop here for today, and we'll continue this topic in the coming week. So see you at the next class, and thank you, and have a nice and wonderful day.